welcome to episode 28 of the Propaganda Report. How are you doing, Binkley?
Well, I haven't been ousted by the deep state yet, so my cover isn't blown.
But they might be listening to your recordings, to your phone calls.
Well, I send them. I record them myself. I just send them to them.
To the Fusion Center near you?
Yeah, I don't want any trouble. Here's everything.
I mean, here's the funny thing. It's like I get nervous because I say whatever I think. And I worry sometimes about like the emails I send because Nordstrom reads my emails. So obviously, I send emails about stuff and it pops up in my ad bar on the side. So obviously and I know because I know somebody works at Nielsen and she said they definitely read your emails. Like
at where?
Nielsen Ratings has like a bunch of different entities.
Yeah.
And they definitely have access to that stuff. But it's funny because I get nervous about what I write in emails. Yet, like the least nervous I am is when I broadcast on the radio. I'll like say whatever I want. And I wonder if it's that subconsciously I feel like once you're out there, you're kind of safe. I don't know.
Oh, so they just put it all out there and they can't do anything?
I know that is definitely a theory. I have no original information. And I think that if you were ever going to be in danger for anything, I think it would be that. And I have none of that. And I'm wrong a lot. Thank goodness. If I were actually onto something, I would be worried. But I'll tell you this, like I really got gun shy after the election because I saw so many of the signs that said like something big was afoot, such as a Trump win. And I just couldn't see it. Like I was just blind to it. It was just too outside the realm of possibility to me. So now I'm a little gun shy about like, oh, I told you I could see it coming. But the one thing I could absolutely see coming, and I wrote in my last post before the election when I still thought it was going to be Hillary, that article about Vern Jordan writing basically what was just about to happen about Facebook and Google should curate the news and should censor the news for us, and that this freewheeling media is out of control and needs to be buttoned up. I mean, this fake news psyop, which was launched right after that, I think we're in full swing of that right now with this Michael Flynn affair and Trump saying the leaks are real, the news is fake. There's just a lot of noise going on right now about the news, and I actually saw.
That sounds like a country song, by the way. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. That just sounded like the title of a country song. The leaks are real. The news is fake.
The country songs really are getting incredibly stupid. Like I want to kiss you in the parking lot was one I heard the other day. I was like, I'm
just running out of places.
They're just running out of things to say. I want to eat a cheeseburger. So, but the First Amendment thing I knew was in the crosshairs for a while, and that's definitely what's coming down. But I want to talk about this whole Michael Flynn thing and what I think is coming out of it. So, like this idea that John Bolton might be the national security advisor would play into what you were saying about that.
He's negotiating?
Well, that you know how you were saying that Michael Flynn, like that he was like a fake national security advisor from the start.
Yeah, I think that the way that I see Trump's actions is that everything he's done, even in the people he's selected, have been a negotiation. He's chosen people in the extremes, kind of like the White House press secretary guy, Kellyanne Conway, to the point where people get so exhausted or outraged that they'll accept anybody who puts in place next, regardless.
Yeah, and there are so many, like that Rex Tillerson thing, to make the sitting head of Exxon the Secretary of State is such an unbelievable conflict of interest that it should never. And the guy seems like he doesn't scare me. He seems like a super, maybe that's his skills. He doesn't seem scary. But they totally approved him, which is just shocking. But the one person they would not approve, so it wasn't even brought up as his undersecretary, was John Bolton. And now it looks like John Bolton is, I think that he's Trump's real pick for national security advisor. And that is terrifying.
Why is it terrifying?
Because it's almost ironic, or they're laughing at us in that all this stuff about the deep state and what they call stovepiping, of just giving, curating what they show the president, and withholding certain things and all that kind of stuff, is what John Bolton made famous. Seymour Hersh, who is, I think, a limited hangout artist, he's like this renowned has these weird articles that play right into the kind of the slightly deeper narrative. You know how we talk about, or you've talked about, how propaganda like attacks different groups, like different propagandas for different groups.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the deeper, more intellectual propaganda is like the Seymour Hersh level. You get it from The Atlantic, I noticed that, maybe the New Yorker and stuff. So he wrote an article in 2003 called Stovepiping, and it was about John Bolton getting access to raw data from the CIA and using it to influence Bush. So when Bush W said, when people said Bush lied, people died, Bush did not lie. I don't think, this is how I read it, is that Bolton was just feeding him unsubstantiated reports that in the totality of intel and analysis and stuff would not have been dispositive, as they say. It wouldn't have been like, oh, obviously this is definitely true. But Bolton was just giving him the stuff that would make him think he was justified in invading Iraq, so that he could get out there and tell us, the people, that he really believed it. And that's Bolton. And he really wanted war with Iraq. And now he really wants war with Iran. So for him to be the guy, that is just, he's so deep state. And this is the first time I felt like war with Iran was a real possibility. And that would be horrible.
Yeah, that's the whole idea of propaganda, is they want people spreading the message who believe the message they're spreading. And sounds like
that's
Bush
the beauty of these puppets. That's why they separate. Like, I always look at,
it's top down too, by the way. That's like, ever since the British infiltrated the United States prior to World War I, which we modeled a lot of our propaganda off of them, their approach was top down. If you start with a president and propagandize him, propagandize people in Congress, then the people that follow them are going to automatically believe the things that they say.
Well, I remember that Colonel House, who was the Woodrow Wilson Svengali, I guess, the guy behind the scenes, the puppet master.
Big stovepiper?
He was a stovepiper. And what he did, their plan, when I guess the Council of Foreign Relations was established, which is the sister of what's now called the Chatham House, at the time was the Royal Institute for International Affairs in London. They set up another one, the Council of Rome, or it's something of Rome. Not the Council of Rome, it's called something else.
Club of Rome.
Yes, Club of Rome. Thank you. So what they said was that if you could control just the State Department, you didn't have to control anything else, and you could that is the one that controls the information to the president, and it's really foreign affairs that matter, that really move the pieces around the chessboard. And the funny thing is, and I think there's a chance it was not a coincidence, that FDR was their pick because he was paralyzed, and that he simply could not get out. Nobody could have out. You could have literally a doorkeeper that would keep people from coming in and out to him. He needed help to move around, to get up and down stairs. You could literally sequester him and control every person who gets to talk to him. And so they would get through Eleanor, they would do that. They go through the wives. And that was the theory. But that was the Council of Foreign Relations, of whom this is interesting about John Bolton. He is a member of the Council of Foreign Relations, which is like supposedly the lefty, it's the world government thing, right? And then, but there's this other organization.
Shadow government, right?
Part
of the shadow government.
They would be the ones who control the shadow government. And there's that famous clip of Hillary when the Council of Foreign Relations opened an office in D.C. She said, this is so much easier than going to the mothership in New York to find out what we should be doing and how we should be thinking about the world. She was getting her marching orders from them. And I feel like they're almost above and behind the shadow governments of the world. But there's another organization that is little known.
It's a double shadow government?
The shadow government is more like administrators, I would say, like deep state administrators, like James Jesus Angleton was like a counter espionage guy in whatever around the JFK time. And like he would be, I would call him perhaps a member of the shadow government, while David Rockefeller, I mean, is he the shadow government or is he above the shadow government? I don't know how you would, what you would say.
He's the deep shadow government.
He says it goes very deep. You can keep peeling that. And I mean, the fact that we know about him makes me wonder if he is really even the guy. Maybe it is the Rothschilds. I don't know. Yeah. But there's this other thing called the Council for National Policy, I think it's called. And it's the conservative answer to the Council on Foreign Relations. But it's super shadowy like that. The membership is secret and all that. But I looked on, there is one document that has the membership from 2014, and Bolton wasn't in it. But the Wikipedia page on Bolton says he's a member of the Council on National Policy also. So he's got kind of working. It makes you think that both sides are all in it for the same thing.
I have a question. They won't tell you who the members of this organization are. But right. Wikipedia will tell us that Bolton's in it?
Yes, I guess I should actually find the reference, but somebody must have said he was in it or at least involved in it, or maybe he just spoke to it. I don't know.
Somebody accidentally let it slip?
Well, it's tough. I mean, Trump, here's interesting. So every one of or most of the Republican candidates for the nomination went and spoke before the CNP last year. And all of their speeches were released except for Trump's.
Really?
Yep. I read this in an article before Trump was elected.
Did they give an explanation?
It was just a sideline. No, it was just an aside. Like, oh, you can read them all here except for Trump's. It's like,
wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah. And so yeah.
I was gonna say, I wonder what it was like. If it was like an hour and a half stand-up routine, like his press
conference, or it was bad. Maybe it was stupid, and he was their pick apparently. So
he was there telling everybody it's their fault. And they're doing the same thing he does now.
No, he was probably saying, I'll work for you. Don't worry about it. I mean, I don't know, but this is the thing with Bolton. He's he's a leader in trying to reshape the Middle East through war. And it's just, that's what he does. And that's what he will do. And if this is Trump's guy, I mean, I think it's crystal clear that Trump is not the man of the people.
Yeah. So no possible way he's keeping his enemies closest. Because he really wouldn't have control over this guy. He's like you said, he takes his orders from the CFR essentially. So this guy would have no power without. It's not like that. Yeah.
Because he's an operative. Like he is the one who he's so classic deep state in that. He's the one who curates the information and gives it to the president.
Right. So he control. Yeah, he's that's right. Stovepipe.
Yeah. If he's going to stop the information, that keeping that kind of an enemy between you and the information,
right,
can't do you any good.
Yeah.
It just can't do you any good. You're not getting around it. Making him in charge of Health and Human Services would be a great way to get him out of your way. Right.
Now, where's he getting the information from? Like what information?
Well, this is what he he was, I think, the Undersecretary of State for Arms Control, if I recall correctly, under Cheney, like he reported to Cheney or whatever, under W. And what he did, so he had access to CIA information, and it used to be all the analysts or the top analysts would get in a room with the Secretary of State people and tell them what their analytics had come up with. And at a certain point, according to the Seymour Hersh article, the analysts, the head guys who processed the information, were no longer invited to the meetings, and they were asked to just data dump all the raw intelligence to Bolton directly. And then Bolton took that. So he was the arms control guy. So that's not about our arms. That's about other people's arms. So he took that information and he told W that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction.
Okay.
And he said that the IAEA reports on Iran not having nuclear arms were wrong. stuff like that, even though his
Right.
information was less verifiable than their information.
Well, what you just mentioned, the weapons of mass destruction thing, the Pentagon had organized a propaganda campaign that they started organizing back in 2009, or not 2009, 1999, before 9/11.
Yeah, I was gonna say, way before, yeah.
Like I think it was called Voices of Authority or something, where they got top generals, people who were going to get automatic trust and respect from the, you bring a
Yes.
general on a network and people can't argue with them, So they
Yes.
planted them at all the networks, and they gave them a script, and they would see them literally repeating their script on the networks, and the networks weren't aware because it was centralized at the Pentagon,
Right.
and for months they sent them out, and they just delivered a scripted message long past the point of people even realizing that there wasn't weapons.
So here's an interesting thing that you bring that operation up. What's happening now with the press seems to me like they are actually trying to make it so it's just based on authority. There never seems to be any evidence anymore.
Officials said.
Yeah, anonymous sources, people not authorized to comment. That's
I noticed that, yeah. I hate
you see
that.
it all over the Wall Street Journal, and now all of a sudden there are leaks that need to be, quashed or squashed, whatever they call it. Everything's a leak. Every single solitary piece of information in the newspaper is a leak. There's no evidence. There's no accountability, and it's gotten to the point where people have, they don't believe it. So then all the information came directly out of leaked emails and leaked cables. It wasn't even like interviews with people. They would say, oh, look, I got this out of Hillary's inbox. I got this out of the CIA, Julian Assange, and all that stuff, I think, is designed to give us authority and credibility, even though there is no evidence. I mean, I think
never any evidence. Never. Like I've been following this specific thing a lot, and what they would used to do, the sources close to the circumstances would say, or people familiar with the situation would say, or a high-ranking official. Now it's gotten to the point where they're going, multiple sources say, dozens of sources say, oogles of sources confirm.
People in the meeting. This is what they say. People in the meeting. You're right. They are more and more like this. This leak. That's so interesting that you say that. Because this Mike Kelly was brought down. I probably should have started by setting up what happened this week. Mike Kelly was the national security advisor for Trump, and he was a Democrat, first of all. So he would be like the last target of Obama holdovers, in my opinion. And he was such a clown, like tweeting about stuff and contradict. I mean, he just seems to me like he was never for real. So that he was an expendable asset, that he was in this position for this short amount of time.
Are you talking about Michael Flynn right now?
Yes, and that he would never was going to be the national security advisor for real. But when they took him down with this leaked phone call with the Russian ambassador that he misrepresented to Mike Pence, that's why Trump asked him for his resignation. First of all, you don't get the audio of the leaked call. But what it says is 7 or 9, I can't remember, but I think, of these high-ranking intelligence guys went to the press with this. So 7 of them? What the hell?
7 or 9 of them, not 8.
I can't. No, I'm wrong. I don't remember.
Okay.
There were 7 or 9. But
I
in any
hear them
case,
say stuff like that though on the news.
Yes. But it was 7. Whatever. Let's just say it was 7. It was definitely at least 7. Why do you need 7 people? Even if there are 7 people, they should say, hey, man, who's the most Teflon here? Who's got a closest relationship? Just you go. You know what I mean? Like
a game of telephone.
Yeah, so 7 anonymous people talked about a call that we did not get the transcript of. I mean, it's really a silly story when you dig into it. And I found, and the people are writing all these articles, it's unprecedented, whatever. Yet I just tweeted at Monica Perez Show that a call from Saif Islam Gaddafi. Gaddafi had 2 sons named Saif. But anyway, Saif Islam Gaddafi, is that funny? And it said, and he called Dennis Kucinich as like one person you could trust probably. And what he said to him was like, hey, all of the reports you're getting about what's happening here in Libya are wrong. There's 1,000 guys. They're mercenary, radical criminals. They are beheading people and taking videos of them. They're just running into the square and blowing things up. There is no revolt here. And this was borne out. I'm telling you, this was borne out, his story, by a bunch of other stuff, like even the Foreign Affairs magazine, which is the Council on Foreign Relations magazine, wrote an article about how there was absolutely no uprising, that it was all Hillary's war. And I wondered why they wrote that. And I realize now they really didn't want Hillary to get in, because it was quite damaging and like had no apparent reason. But what he did was, so what Saif Gaddafi said to Kucinich is like, this is nuts. The United States should, obviously not fall for this, blah, blah, blah. That guy, I don't know if he's dead or in jail or what. He got his fingers cut off by the opposition. Like, that's Saif al-Gaddafi, who was Islam Gaddafi, who was a super fancy dude, went to like Harvard or Oxford or whatever. He ran around with the Rothschilds in England. I mean, it is messed up what happened, what they did, Hillary and that gang did. But this leak, I saw Kucinich talk about it briefly. He said, I never recorded my phone calls. I have no idea who did. I don't know where this phone call came from. And it was him in his office at his desk talking to Gaddafi, the son. So, like these leaks, that's very serious business. And it got virtually, I remember it was mentioned on Fox on a Saturday for like 1 minute. And I did my whole show on it, that day, because it was so crazy. And so I'm saying, like, these leaks, this is just, we would have heard just leak the call. You don't even have to put your name on it if you leak the actual call.
Well, the leaks,
like a setup.
The leaks are we're almost getting leaks in real time. We're almost getting leaks before they happen at this point.
Right. They're live streaming the phone calls from the Oval Office.
Yeah,
that's a good point too. That's a good point too. But here's the thing. So this is a psyop, in my opinion. Michael Flynn getting ousted by the deep state. The whole thing was a psyop, and it had two purposes, I think. One, I wasn't sure about, which you had floated, about getting the real guy in. That seemed right in the beginning, but then when the leak stuff and the fake news stuff really took center stage, I thought maybe that was the only goal. But what you said, so now if Bolton gets in, to me, there'll be very little doubt that wasn't the ultimate goal all along. And then the other thing is this censorship idea, this idea of really cracking down on people inside the government sharing information or having the press have access to information. For me, there should be almost no opacity in government. It should be almost totally transparent. Unless it's about an imminent invasion of our property, it's our information. They shouldn't button it up at all. And now they're going to crack down, just like Obama tried to do. They're going to crack down on people. Obama's program, Insider Threat Program, was about getting people to rat on their friends and office mates and stuff about like personal problems, and under penalties, like if you didn't rat on your friend, you got in trouble.
What kind of personal problems? What do you mean? Just
like they would say, if somebody's stressed out about their home life, if they look like they have too much money or too little money, if they're getting a divorce, any disgruntlement, if they're unhappy, if they're not, just surfing the web at lunchtime, if they're doing serious stuff, you have to worry about it.
So if they're not connected to their devices all the time, and that could be seen as a sign of stress that they need to be reported.
I didn't understand why that thing about surfing the web at lunchtime and reading The Onion or whatever was important. You might be right. But that's the kind of thing they wanted to crack down on. And for me, what Obama actually did, the people he actually punished were whistleblowers. They weren't leakers. They were whistleblowers saying, you are engaging in unconstitutional activity. And this John Bolton told Judge Napolitano on an interview on Judge Knapp's show on Fox that he does not consider his oath to the Constitution binding when he's operating in the sphere outside of law, because there's anarchy internationally, which is a code word for somebody who wants a one world government. They call it international anarchy. We operate in a state of anarchy because anarchy is a bad word. So he said the Constitution doesn't apply to him in those circumstances. So that's the kind of stuff you want whistleblowers to say. This guy is operating outside the Constitution, and they feel like the Constitution doesn't apply to them, and they want to make sure that they don't get outed.
That's huge news right there that he said that.
I know.
That's how I see all these people, is they operate completely outside of the laws. And I see the laws as what they use to keep everybody else down, knowing that they're never going to be restrained by them, while everybody else thinks that they'll follow the laws. So that lets them just get away with doing anything while we're blind to it. I mean, honestly, not to take this on the pedophile rant, but this is why the pedophiles get away with all this stuff, because everybody else operates under a system of morals and laws. They know that everybody else thinks that they will also, so they just freely do all this crazy shit, and everybody's like, "Oh, that would never really happen," but it's really happening.
I will one up you in that theorizing that these guys actually do that stuff because they're above the law, and their appetite for power and control, they can demonstrate how exceptional they are by beating, like one Arab guy. I think he got he was actually on trial for it, I believe, because he had himself filmed beating his slave to death with a nail nailed into a board. And he had himself filmed because he wanted to watch it again later. And that's what they used against him. If I recall the story correctly, that is what happened. And they say that, or I have read that these guys do that. There's like this one videotape of that girl the woman I sent to you about human hunting parties, which I thought were complete like lizard people stuff, like completely, I just can't even go there until some stuff in evidence, came up, not necessarily about the human hunting parties, but this woman's testimony was actually just shocking. And I can't conceive that she was acting. She could have been, but I don't think so. And that takes it to a new level, but it's their way of having control over each other, of blackmailing each other, of showing how they operate completely outside of the ethics, but they want us to have the ethics so that we don't get out of line. So that we will receive, sociopaths exploit your ethics. That's all they ever do.
Oh, absolutely.
They expect you to color within the lines, right, and then you can't,
Yeah, Saul Alinsky, I mean, he talks about morals in his book. Basically, don't have morals because they'll hold you back, and you need to be flexible.
And didn't that defector, that Russian defector, said that when the Russians took over, when the communists took over, the first thing they did was kill everybody who was actually a true believer, because you couldn't control them. Like you couldn't, they wouldn't get in line. Only the pragmatists get the people who were, and that's true. Like I just remember in Harvard when I went, I was such an unusual case because I went to Harvard only as a junior and senior. I went to community college first. And I kind of showed up, once you've been out in the world. I was a waitress for many years before that. The difference between right and wrong. And then I would show up and it was, you really learned very quickly that you weren't trying to figure out the truth or have a normal conversation, think outside the box. You were really trying to figure out what the professor was kind of famous for and what his view of the world was, and regurgitate that on these, every class had like one test at the end of the thing. And you just learn very quickly that you're only rewarded for staying within the confines of what they call the paradigm, that existed, and they get away with it. So even when people are totally wrong about stuff at these levels, they can completely get away with it because they have like the respect of the community. But if you're wrong, like Dan Rather, he lied about that thing, about George W. Bush, that document, and he's still like hugely respected.
And he's teaching a journalism class apparently online that I keep seeing these videos pop up. It's just unbelievable.
I don't know. So
I mean, maybe the class is actually just him telling you how to bullshit. So maybe he's honest in his teaching.
Yeah, my I will say this. My sister went to a journalism school. Like, she didn't graduate, but she did well. She had a toddler at the time. She just couldn't finish it. But the teachers liked that she would actually get out there and interview people and stuff. She was rewarded for that. But she said that the other students, she was the only one who did that. The other students just ripped off the memos from like physically, I think there was a machine. They would rip off the memos from the Associated Press or whatever and just rewrite the articles. Then that was at journalism school.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I studied journalism in college. I was a couple credits short. Yeah, I got an econ degree, and I was a couple credits short in journalism and broadcast. And we really, it wasn't all that stimulating, or maybe I didn't get much out of it because I was in college and I just really wanted to go out and drink and chase girls. But thinking back on it, maybe I would have gotten much more out of it now, probably, than I did.
Yeah, I know that feeling. But isn't that always the case? I mean,
yeah,
wasted on the young. That's what they say. So I don't know. But this attack on the press, it's so. Like when you see all the noise, like if people are listening to this in real time, last week it was just when I'm getting emails or of articles, links and stuff of, Pat Buchanan wrote the deep state targets Trump, and Bill Kristol says from the Weekly Standard, I'd rather have the deep state to the Trump state, and everybody's talking about it. It's so noisy, and then Trump has acted like an impromptu press conference. Of course, it was totally a strategic rollout of that or whatever. And then it was like totally chaotic, and he was completely on the offensive against the press. And that's what was getting all the news. There was just so much noise. It's hard to focus. And plus, like for me, the paradigm shift, whatever happened with the Trump election made me question my own sanity of how to recognize these psyops. But I'll tell you, when I think back and reflect, every single psyop that I identified, I stand behind. Like that Kate Steinle thing. When Trump launched his campaign and Kate Steinle supposedly was killed by an immigrant, the slightest investigation into that story shows that the government and the media absolutely did not bring the true story out. And how would Trump get the government and the media to do that? So it was clearly a psyop of some kind. I didn't know where it was going. I thought it was just to get him the Republican, some kind of Republican attention. I didn't know it was going to take him all the way. But these psyops, they are clear what they are. I don't always know the full extent of the plan, but this thing here absolutely smacks of a psyop. And I recall identifying that the First Amendment stuff is what's in the crosshairs right now. This whole pre-crime thing, criminal
Have you seen
profiling.
that television show?
Which
pre-crime? There's a new television show.
No.
Somebody mentioned it on Twitter. I can't remember the name of it, but I have seen a little bit of it. It's a guy who he gets a police district, and he's a billionaire tech guy. And the show is about my technology is the police now. It's like drones chasing people.
Well, that's a real thing. I've been writing articles about it, whatever. Whenever I see an article, I throw it out there and give a little analysis from where Shot Spotter is, where they're going to put microphones on all the street lights just in case somebody fires a gun. So the whole entire country, right, just in case somebody fires a gun and nobody knows where it was fired. I mean, just ridiculous. Private enterprise would never, ever do that. It could only be a government contract. But there's also this thing that pops up every once in a while where they do algorithms of where are hotspots at what time and place and send the cops there. And it would be okay. I mean, any good cop would just patrol the places at the times that he knew. But this, I think, is going to lead to giving them license to shake people down, to make people stay inside. And I feel like it could extend to social media. I think the Facebook thing, this Zuckerberg wrote what's called a Globalist Manifesto, but it's really, it's in keeping with this Vernon Jordan's mandate that Google and Facebook should curate the news, and because they're not actually officially government entities, although I would argue that they are government entities and started out that way even, but that they can, it's just like pushing down the USA Patriot Act to the USA Freedom Act, which you're familiar with, where the corporations collect the metadata, because then you really have no transparency. You have no right to look at the books, to look at this stuff. Facebook has every right to, as a libertarian, I would say if it's, it has every right to censor whatever it wants. It's a private enterprise, but it's really, that's why it's a little squishy, because it's not. Even the research at universities that leads to the technology that we get is government funded, and to the extent that they feed it to who they want, who they can control, then it's it is a government entity, and there is no way to really compete with that because you don't have the resources in the private market. Like if this had just been dog eat dog, you would have a Facebook, but you'd also have MySpace. You'd also have things that could not be controlled.
Well, we still have MySpace. It's just like a desert with a bunch of rappers.
Well, okay, maybe I don't even know, but I can't. There's no alternative for me. Like I'm kind of bored with Facebook, but there's no place for me to go where I could say to like-minded people, let's go there. But there is like this Twitter thing, Gab AI. It's like a Twitter competitor where it has a lot of, Pepe the Frog kind of guys all over it.
Yeah.
And people really have fun getting super un-PC. And I suspect, I think there's a chance that is actually a honeypot, is like actually a way to trap people into registering their most offensive thoughts, even in jest, to be used against them possible later. Not in jest. I mean, there was a kid who was in jail for making some joke about like massacring something, a group of people, like parallel to a game he was playing, but he was totally completely
right. They took it as a terrorist.
Yeah, he wrote
terrorist
JK
threat.
on it, and they put him in jail.
I used to do that like when I was younger. Me and my friends would play those video games, when you could talk to people online with them, right, when that stuff first came out. And I didn't play them all that much. I didn't care, but I loved the fact that you could talk shit to people that you were playing with. And, I used to go heckle at baseball games all the time. When my brother played baseball, it's one of my strengths I developed as a kid because my brother's a lot older than me, and I was like 8 years old, and he's playing college baseball. So I'm sitting with the opposite team, and I'm fighting with the fans and students over there. So I developed my heckling skills early. At one point in time, I actually sat in the middle of the family section of the opposite team, and by the end of the game, I had them heckling their own children. Because I was like, I'm going to heckle anyway. I just need to figure out how to do it.
You deserve that. I hope you get heckled when you do your little shows.
I mean, I've been heckled before. But like,
that's so the opposite of what I do. I don't even like to hang up on callers. I don't even like to argue with anyone.
You don't have to be mean-spirited about it. You just, you can make it fun. But like in these video games, it was just so unique that you could talk to people from anywhere in the world while they're playing. So I would talk to people, but it was these things can get dirty. Like you can talk to somebody who's in there and is just saying the most offensive, crazy things you've ever heard. And I can absolutely see where they could take that stuff and start calling them terroristic threats. I'm a little surprised it took that long, but this gaming thing, the gaming industry is just, it's a well for regulation. They want to regulate this stuff so badly. And the stuff that they do in the gaming world, if it were said or done in the regular world, people would be, we've already regulated all of this stuff. And so now they want to take control of the gamers. I think that might have been something – I think Gamergate might be associated with that in some way. I don't know.
That Gamergate thing, I never did dig into that. I kind of had a feeling it was also a psyop, but I never really dug into it. But I think that as far as censoring that stuff goes, I think they're not ready to do that because they want to collect –
yeah.
They want to collect all because they do. I don't know if they're collecting it yet, but they were building, this was big story at the time, building this giant fusion center in Utah where they could collect all of our electronic communications, all of humanity's electronic communications for 100 years, just one of these data centers. And if they're collecting all that stuff, And then you couple that with Zbigniew Brzezinski saying that every single person, you could pull up all of their like innermost thoughts with a keystroke. He said that in the 70s, that's what was coming. I can't help but think that, they've gone from just actually getting what you have to say to provoking you. Like that's what the whole nasties versus deplorables tension is about, actually provoking people to say ugly things, like what that Laban talked about in the book that you gave me, Crowds, the Mass Psychology of Crowds, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Where in crowds, people will act like animals. They would never own that. privately.
And behind a screen as well. That's another layer of protection where people can be
Absolutely.
more confident saying
I've
things.
experienced that myself with anonymous comments on my blog and stuff.
Yeah.
Where I think I told you this. I had a guy, I was curating it. Sometimes people get so offensive to me personally. Like, I just don't like slurs and things like that. It's just not a good argument, in my opinion. I use vulgarity like it's going out of style, but I don't like the slurs when people are saying like you're whatever. People just, I don't like it. So every once in a while, if there's somebody who's doing that to me a lot, I'll just like curate comments. Like you turn off automatic comment posting and then you just look at it and make sure it's not awful and then go ahead and post it.
Yeah.
So somebody didn't realize, they tried to post an anonymous comment and it didn't pop right up. So he posted it again with his name on it because maybe he thought you could post, maybe anonymous comments are curated and other comments aren't. And the difference between the comment he had posted anonymously and the one he posted with his name on it was like, the first one was so nasty, like, oh, you're just a stupid bitch, whatever. And the next one was like, you might reconsider your position. So I don't tend to be mean, but he really deserved it. I posted them both. And I was like, oh, that's really funny that you would, when you're hiding behind anonymity, be unkind to, a dignified person and then treat, but when you put your name on it, you treated me with respect. Like, it was just uncool.
Well, we've been
maybe I'm not a dignified person, but I wanted to be treated with respect, a little modicum of respect. And
but if you look on YouTube comments, if you read YouTube comments, it's just like it will. If you just want to go ahead and condition a child to the worst language that they're ever going to experience, just sit them down and have them read YouTube comment after YouTube comment on controversial videos, and they'll see the worst things that they'll ever read in their life. We've been called fucking shills multiple times on YouTube.
One of those comments, which I was proud and happy that
First
YouTube
time,
YouTube actually screens them out, which I thought was good. But when I read one of the comments, it said you're not even good actors. And it took me forever to understand what he was talking about.
I'm like, did he see one of my commercials or that?
Yeah, right, because you actually are an actor. I was like puzzled, and then I realized that what I think he was saying was that this is all an act.
Yeah, he thinks we're fake.
It was so complicated. Even fake is one thing, but acting, so that's why, like, when I was watching Trump's press conference, I'm trying to figure him out because he's, Obama was really a crafted personality since like the day he was born. His grandfather who raised him was like in military intelligence. His mother works for Geithner's father at the Ford Foundation in Indonesia. His stepfather was the liaison of Union Oil to the post-coup government of Indonesia. So the U.S. put in a military dictator in Indonesia, and Obama's father-in-law, stepfather, was the liaison between big oil and our military guy there. I mean, and he went to a super elite high school in Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Obama was groomed.
Well, the story about his mom also, like if you read about his mom online or his grandma, because I was like, how did he go to this school? And basically the story you get about his grandma online is she worked really hard and struggled as a waitress for many, many years. Then she became the vice president of a bank. And I'm like, whoa,
I knew she was the vice president of a bank, yeah. And the grandfather was a total, they purged his records. Like, you can't get it. Freedom of Information Act, if I recall correctly, his records have been purged. And there's a picture of him laying, Obama's father when Obama's father arrived in Hawaii. Now, the story about Obama's father and mother meeting was that they sat next to each other in a Russian language class, totally communist. But it can't, I mean, it seems unlikely given there's a photograph of the grandfather with the father the day the father arrives. So this guy is super, super deep state, if you want to call it that way, Obama. He's groomed as a face man. Like I was saying earlier that like when you watch an anchor on TV, to have somebody have like the right face and the right delivery and the plausibility and also be like the brain power doing the research. I mean, that's why radio is so hard, I think, is that you have to do it yourself and then deliver it. Like you have to do it. It's in your brain. It's live. It's challenging. But those people
he's
don't.
The press secretary. is the press secretary for the Globalists. He's the same thing except for the Globalists as the White House press secretary.
Yes, good, yes. And Obama was actually pretty good at it, and they respected him. And he's the one who started the curating of the press. He's the one who barred certain people. He's the one who asked for questions in advance. Nobody gave him flack for it. He got a little flack. And then like Helen Thomas said something about Palestine, and she was just banned forever. She was done, and then she died. But yeah, truly, yeah. And then like I think he got Glenn Beck fired. It was very what he was doing. Trump's going to take it to the next level. But what he did, they didn't out him for. But he had presence of mind. I think he had a good memory. He really focused on it. Trump, I do not get the sense that he could really speak in depth on policy matters. Like he actually said in the press conference, I was watching Charles Krauthammer, whatever, the Fox guy on TV.
Stop doing that.
And he said that Flynn did nothing wrong. And then I heard other people say that too. He did nothing wrong. I'm like that you're actually saying out loud.
He's citing Fox News to a bunch of liberals as his,
But I mean, like he's the one he's the one who should have the inside information. You know what I mean? He should be briefed. Yeah. I'm not making fun of the guy, but my point is that there he is doing it, and he looked like he was acting to me. And I saw in the beginning he seemed a little nervous, but by the end he was completely good. Best defense is a good offense, thrown it at them, just got into his groove, really warmed up like the reality show apprentice star that he is. And
I really think that these conferences, I just wish they would get to the point where Trump or the other guy, what's his name, Spicer, they just walk out in a glitzy yellow bathrobe with their name on the back of it, boxing gloves on. They walk in, ding the bell, they do a spit take, and they say first question. They have their fist raised.
Dude, it might. I mean, there are a couple of Saturday Night Live skits that I think are real. So when Dan Aykroyd was Jimmy Carter and asked the guy on the phone if he has any Allman Brothers to come down from the acid he took, it's a great skit. You got to see it. Then there's another one of Will Ferrell being Bush saying, what's the word of the year? And him saying strategery. Yeah. So, I always think back and I'm like, did Jimmy Carter talk a guy down off of acid? Or is that, wait, did Bush say strategery? So my signature, actually there are two right now. One is Melissa McCarthy doing Sean Spicer. I mean, it's so good. It's actually not even funny.
It is good, yeah.
Except for when she takes out the water machine gun and starts squirting the CNN guy. That was funny. But my husband the other day, did a Trump imitation, and he's not very political and he doesn't do, but it just came up. It was whatever he was saying, like some Trumpism. And I said, wait, that wasn't a Trump imitation. You were imitating Alec Baldwin imitating Trump. He's like, yes, that's what I was doing. So there are these iconic imitations, but it might get to the point. I feel like it could circle back and do what you're doing, where they get actually ridiculous about it. And Trump takes it to that level, and they make fun of him and everything, but
he controls the narrative with it.
He's not. They're not hurting him, and it's really working. But I feel like the way they do it with him, because people when I did radio, I was never in broadcasting. I was an investment banker, and they thought it was funny. I was like an anarchist. It's like, they thought that I think they thought that was novel, and they thought it was really funny. I was totally serious, but they had to give me tips of how to do it because I just had no idea. And you don't script it or anything. You just have your ideas, you formulate your ideas. They never told me ideas. They're just formulate your ideas and then just talk about it. People.
Okay, what are you talking about? You talking about doing radio or speeches?
I was talking about doing radio, and speech is the same way. I don't like it when I was at the Grammys, Beyonce was reading something, and I'm like, you don't read a speech like that. You know what you want to say, and you say it, and it's so much more. But you have to really know what you want to say, and you have to keep the point in focus. I don't really do that. I don't ever keep anything in focus. I'm sorry. But with Trump, you could see that they told him two things. The leaks are real. The news is fake. Just run with that. And when in doubt, just those are your messages. Those are the things to say. And because you can't, this guy could say stuff that really is not okay. I mean, someone has got to control that for his own self-interest. He doesn't want to say something that's really going to hurt him. And I feel like they gave him his mind vitamins, and he went out there and he employed it. But but
I
you
know
see it as
exactly
like
how I would
acting.
handle those things. Like
What would you do?
I've coached people on those, and I've done them. I treat it like stand up.
Do
It
people
is.
know that you were an improv coach? Is that how you would describe yourself, or an actor, or stand up? Like what? How would you
Yeah,
describe your?
I used to teach a stand up comedy class and do a lot of stand up and improv. I used to coach improv teams, and I've been doing that for like 10 plus years, longer than that actually, and acting and all that. So I've been in a lot of situations where I've had to prepare for speeches, and I've helped people write a lot of speeches and work on their presentation. That's what I would help them kind of craft the speech in a way to where it, to where it highlighted their strengths, and I would try to work on their performance aspect of it, because it's not about the words. It's about the when you're given as a live performance of speech, it's about the power you're commanding and the emotional energy in the room. And unless you're speaking to the people on television, either way, what I would do in those situations, especially with Trump, is I would know like the back of my hand everything, and they can use the total information control, everything about the journalists that are going to be coming into the room. I would find out as much information about them as possible. And since everything he does is like a comedy roast anyway, I would select the order that I was going to talk in.
Oh
I would
my gosh.
anticipate the questions. I would look at all I would overanalyze the hell out of it, or I'd get my advisors to, but I would look at the patterns of questions that each of these people ask, and I would anticipate.
I think they give the questions in advance. I think Obama set the tone for that. No, you don't think
I would.
so?
Well, he might get, if he gets the questions in advance, then that's even better.
I don't believe that though. I can't imagine. It does not look like.
Yeah, I don't know.
And he doesn't even want them, to be honest with you. I bet he doesn't even want them, because he does not seem like a guy who's staying up all night studying.
Yeah, he's not.
And
that's why.
Even if he were to be, he's simply, at the pace he's going, that can't be what's happening. It's just moving too fast.
See, Trump didn't do this. They say he didn't do this during the debates. You know how they do the practice debates? They have somebody pretend to be. They say he didn't do that. I would absolutely. I would do that with press conferences. I would have people in there, and I would practice getting my rebuttals ready in ways that if I'm Trump's perspective, in ways that it would shut them down.
That's very interesting, because they made a big deal of Trump saying, like, right before the press conference, hey, I've got some free time, let's have a press conference. And everybody's like, he's so casual, he's so funny, oh my gosh, who does that? And to me, that kind of weird behavior, like that, to do something like that, there's a reason. It doesn't you're not going to say. He clearly wanted to make that impression, and maybe it's because he does practice, and he didn't want it to look like it was practice.
Yeah, but he wasn't laying on the couch flipping around going, you know what, I'm tired of watching cartoons. Let's have a press conference.
I don't know. I mean, I do not get the sense that, I just do not get the sense that he goes deep on any of it.
I agree with you on that. That's that whole image thing, and creating that image that he can do things on the fly like that, and that he
never sleeps.
Unpredictability, yeah. Oh, you said something on Saturday that. What was? Oh, right. So Trump's whole thing is about making people, unpredictable, making people think he's completely unpredictable, and never giving complete, full information to people. So I was thinking about that in association with the Flynn stuff you were talking about, and how they kept it from Mike Pence. And I'm like, if Trump is following his own advice that he talks about and that he puts in his book, then he's keeping secrets from absolutely everybody. There are certain things that he's not telling not one person.
But I don't think I think that he is, I hate to say it, I hate to hurt people who have hope. It really upsets people when I say this. It really upsets people. But for me, this guy, his job for the past 14 years has been to be Kim Kardashian, not Mark Cuban. He's been an actor. He did 14 seasons of The Apprentice. His branding was much more a part of his business than owning real estate. I'm just saying.
I know. I just had a horrible image of Donald Trump doing that picture where Kim Kardashian's ass is all glazed up. Yeah, I'm like, oh, God, I don't want to see Trump doing that.
That picture looks like, did you ever see the crazy picture of the fake doctor who was arrested for doing butt jobs? It was not a real plastic surgeon. And
I think I heard about that.
Air tire filler.
Oh my gosh.
Can a tire, fix a flat can.
That's terrible.
Yeah, putting stuff like that, putting like cement in people's butts. And the picture of the person who's butt, it looks exactly like Kim Kardashian's.
Wow.
So, but no, not not Trump's. I hate to disparage him. I don't think he's evil. I'm not even sure he really knows, but I do not think he is some mastermind who's got everybody chasing their tails. I think that this is his persona, just like it was in The Apprentice. And I mean, it is the same persona, and he's been working on it a long time. And I think that it's, just like Obama's persona was, the serious academic constitutional law professor, which is ridiculous, juxtaposed to him smoking pot with fedora. And it's just ridiculous to think that. And, and even the way they present these guys racially, like Obama took a white woman to his prom, and I saw that picture next to George Zimmerman taking a black woman to his prom. It was so funny. Like at the same time, and then Trump with all this immigration stuff, 2 of his 3 wives are immigrants. Right. I mean, it's just he
Same
doesn't
with the
care.
Anti-Semitism,
And his good friend, well, he's not. He's actually, that's what all this is pro-Israel. And John Bolton is 100%. Wants to craft the Middle East for a certain faction of, I don't know if Israel runs this faction of Israel is the dog or the tail, but Bolton is definitely for that, expanding borders, I guess, or I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not an anti-Semite. And Roy Cohn, his mentor, died of AIDS.
Right.
I mean, not from IV drug use.
Yeah, but people believe he's the next Hitler, and they believe that he.
But that's how he presents himself. I mean, I'm not
know.
saying he presents himself. He wants to be Hitler. I'm just saying he's deliberately provocative in that way, just like Obama was deliberately provocative. I hate talking about this stuff because I really don't want to offend people or say stuff that hurts people. And I maybe I'm wrong. I'm not saying I'm absolutely right. I'm just telling you my impressions of how all this stuff shakes out if you want to actually talk about identities. But with those guys, I think it's part of their crafted image.
Well, they leave it vague enough to where it can be interpreted multiple ways. And the news on the left, people who get their news from CNN or MSNBC, it's gotten to the point where it doesn't matter anymore. And he did bring a lot of this on because of the way that his campaign rhetoric went. But it doesn't matter what he does. Anything he says is going to be framed as being that anti-Semitic, racist stuff.
I have to say something about the anti-Semitic thing, but you finish and then I'll tell you.
There was an image, and I'm making a video on this, but I'll put it in the show notes. On CNN, the way that CNN and they all do it, it's just a matter of which website you're focusing on at the time. But CNN has started doing their website in a way where they kind of make the images. They shifted the images around. Instead of one main image at the front and one headline, they're putting a headline and then a handful of images.
Yeah, I saw
but here's what they're doing though, and it's all about the associations they create, and we automatically respond to these associations, and their audience is already predisposed to dislike Trump. So they're looking for stuff that confirms those beliefs and strengthens those beliefs. So CNN the other day, they had a headline that was something like U.S. bombings of Jewish centers, bomb threats of Jewish centers exploding in America. So they said it in a way where it seems like actual bombings are happening, right? But it's threats are happening. And then they put
that's so interesting.
They put an image of people right below that looked like they were fleeing and running. But,
my gosh.
So they made it seem like bombings were happening. And then you read it, and it just says the number, 60 bombings in the past so-and-so, which means
it's probably made up.
Well, not 60 bombings, 60 call-in threats. And it means absolutely nothing unless was it 50 the month before? Was it 70 the month before? So what's the change?
And was it the reporter calling them in? You know what I mean?
Right,
exactly. They really make stuff up. They really make up.
And here's my point on that. Is right next to that image. I mean, it's hilarious when you look at it. Right next to this image of Jewish atrocity going on in America, they're painting, they have an image of Trump literally facing the image of the people running and fleeing, as though he's watching to see how his air raids are going. And then underneath the Jewish story is white nationalists taking over college, white nationalists more violent. Everything is, I'm like, this is so over the top. The associations they're creating with this, the imagery and stuff.
Well, that helps me understand something, because when I was in denial about it, because I really do not. Before recently, I had absolutely no sense of any kind of nationalism or white identity thing or racism or anything. It would just popped up over the past couple of years, really. It took me a while to actually see it as, or start thinking of it as like a deliberate thing. But when I was first exposed to it, like I was super nervous about even getting emails from people who were into this stuff because I was like, I don't want that in my email. And now that everybody's talking about it, I don't worry. And that's when I realized that this could all be a trap. But I would get emails that I did not like. And with even just links from websites that were pretty popular, but were very anti-Semitic, like not just questioning Israel policy and the influence of, the Rothschilds in the world or anything like that, which I am totally interested in. But a lot, I actually saw false information in really popular websites. And I'm like, why? So there's this alt-right thing. So they've got anti-immigration stuff, race stuff, anti-Semitism, all this stuff, to the point where I started thinking that that this idea of, because one of the big conspiracy theories, there was a Wall Street Journal article by Brent Stevens saying, whenever someone talks about the grand conspiracy, it's really an act of anti-Semitism because it always goes to, really, it's a crazy article. Yeah. So that, like, you can't talk about, if you talk about conspiracy theories, you're an anti-Semite. So that's what he's saying. But there is, there's definitely a huge group of, the conspiracy theory that it is all about the Jewish conspiracy. And, the fact that it is all over these big websites makes me think that in itself is like a psyop. I don't know. I really don't know. But here's my question. Here's where it all comes down to like a puzzle to me. This is the alt-right group that is credited for Trump's popularity. It's the deplorables or whatever. Yeah. And to the there is a lot of this anti-Semitism in there. They think there's definitely a sector who thinks that the Jewish bankers run the world. So when Trump, who is obviously, to say things like, I'm moving the embassy to Jerusalem, or there should be a one-state solution, or to just do this Muslim ban in such a provocative way, that to me is so obviously, in alliance, like John Bolton, that's in alliance with the kind of aggressive right-wing Israeli faction. Yet these people who love Trump do not see it that, they don't see that. So what I've been keying in on is when you have those like other messages, because people especially with Trump, like with Obama, they would project stuff onto him. With Trump, he kind of throws it all out there and you pick and choose what you want. And one of the things they did, which I thought played right into this, was when they put out the Holocaust statement that didn't mention Jewry. It didn't mention the Jews. And it was just an insane thing to do. But and what you're saying about the cover of CNN, that's the stuff that people can latch onto to say, oh, secretly, he's like out there with John Bolton and Bibi Netanyahu, but secretly he's one of us. Like that's just the thing. I don't
dog whistling, kind of. Remember?
What? What is that again? You tell me.
Dog whistling, where somebody gives a speech and they use language and symbols that everybody knows generally, but there's also specific meanings that speak to people who know the specific meaning of it.
Yeah, that must be exactly what it is. And like he sent out a tweet with Hillary, and with a Jewish star behind her saying something disparaging about her being in the pocket of the banks. And, again, this is another subject I absolutely hate to talk about because I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to offend people. There is definitely power in the world. There are organizations that are based on membership in a group, from Mormons to Scientology to IPAC or whatever. There are definitely groups that promote the interests of their group, and to see, for me, I think my basic conclusion is that it really is it's really the money people, the bankers. But and a lot of that, where does David Rockefeller fit in? Like, does he work for Rothschild? Like, is that? I really do not know, but that's why, like, this alt-right thing with that has these websites that really harp on the Jewish conspiracy, that kind of looks, I smell a rat with that. It kind of looks like a psyop. It kind of looks like a deflection from the true, kind of nature of power. Or maybe, maybe it's meant for me to think that, maybe it's like a double psyop where, like it's so obvious and egregious that really it's trying to throw me off. Like, I don't know. That's when I just really can't grasp the truth. But the thing about Trump is weird.
Yeah.
But it's weird with Trump because he's definitely, if we have a war with Iran, or if he puts John Bolton in, or if he continues to, if we escalate any kind of military action, his guy, Steve Feinberg, is going to take over or assess intelligence agencies. That's a guy whose company owns DynCorp, which is a huge defense company. All of his guys are on defense contractors. That means war. That everybody's telling him to go to war for sure, because that's what they need, or at least to build up. And if that's what's going on in the Middle East, I mean, that plays into the hands of the bankers at the very least. So I just don't understand why people don't see what, this contradiction in Trump.
Well, it's the confirmation bias kicking in. People are going to pay attention to what confirms their beliefs, and when they run into that information that causes cognitive dissonance, they're going to look the other way.
So that is for sure the dog whistling, and I would go one step further. So like the Holocaust message definitely was the dog whistling, from what I can tell what you're saying. But the stuff on the cover of CNN,
I'm trying to find
that. You think that it's to make Trump look bad, and maybe it is, because that's the audience that it's directed at.
Well,
but it would give fuel to the fire of people who think that secretly he's Batman and he's going to come out and save the world from the grand conspiracy.
Right. Now that's interesting, because you're right. Everybody interprets information and processes it in different ways based on what they're predisposed to believe and their prejudices and stuff. And the different websites, their audiences, they target different audiences. People go to the websites for different reasons. The people who say like CNN go to the websites to find information that validates their negative feelings about Trump and their negative feelings about people on the right, and their positive feelings about their value system, their progressiveness. And the opposite is true, for say Fox News. But, somebody might go to Fox News. Somebody who likes Fox News might go to CNN. They go for a different reason. They go to maybe just point out all the lies. And
here's a twist. That's funny, because I've mentioned this a couple of times, but here it adds a new nuance. Twice in the past several weeks, I have heard on Fox News clips of CNN anchors, like where the news is becoming about itself, which makes me crazy. But
CNN did that to Fox too, because you mentioned that.
So they're trying to give, they're trying to prove to their own people what the other side is up to, but they know that their own people are never going to see it because they never ever go over there. So they have to bring it to them.
Right? Yeah. That's a great point.
And the CNN Jeff Zucker, who was Trump's boss for The Apprentice at NBC, I don't understand why people don't realize that when the National Review puts Trump's name in gold on the cover and says, we don't like him, or Jeff Zucker says, this is the scariest guy I've ever seen, that is such simple reverse psychology. It's so simple that they are getting him elected, and they know it. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that they know it. They're absolutely playing into it. I shouldn't say there's absolutely no doubt. I have no doubt. I've been wrong before.
Yeah.
But they know. I mean, he spent nothing on the campaign. Nothing. Obama spent $1 billion and he spent like $50 million and got it back, or whatever. It's just nuts how he got these messages that come from his opposition validate the image he wants to project. It's very interesting to me. But I have to say, like, this, talking about the the conspiracies and Israel and stuff, it's so impossible to have conversations about this stuff without like my social conditioning kicking in of being like, don't ever talk about any of that. You know what I mean? Like, is that, does everybody feel that way? I mean, what is that?
I think so. I think a lot of people feel that way, that because we have those, the associations that come to mind when people hear those words. They're connected to a lot of emotions that instantly come flooding out, and people react in ways to where you can't have a conversation about it. And that's,
what I really don't like is that you cannot analyze any actual policies or whatever if they hang, racism on it or
exactly.
anti-Semitism. So you can't, like the Civil Rights Act of whatever it was, 1964, was it? Where it was totally, I think it was totally fine, except for the part where it had an inroads into.
I sent you that image.
I see that. I should turn my thing off. That inroads into private property. It told private property owners what they could and couldn't do, which was really an extension of the segregation problem, because the segregation problem was they told private property owners they had to segregate. And to reverse that and say they cannot is again a violation of private property rights. And that's a big problem. And that was a problem with the Civil Rights Act. But if you talk about that, like Rand Paul's tried to talk about that once, and I mean, they just went, I just called him a racist up and down. And he could not point out that private property rights are the answer, to not being attacked. Like if they cannot get on your private property, you can have associations where you're safe. Not like as a white supremacy thing, but as like, just a community. What if you wanted a defensive community? What if you wanted to have a gay community?
Exactly.
Are you not allowed?
Those words have been, a lot of those words have been with us for a long time. We've long been conditioned. People have long been conditioned to react that way. We saw the establishment of new trigger words with the election when Hillary laid out the alt-right thing and the associations with nationalism. That was a process because they had to put those terms into public consciousness, and then they had to give the traits. They had to create the negative feelings around it. Then they had to repeat it. And now you can't have conversations about this stuff.
And you can't say alternative.
Exactly. Every time I think of the word alternative, I'm like,
you're racist.
Alternative rock, crazy. Whatever. I hear alternative rock. I think I'm going to start hearing Ku Klux Klan band singing.
Skinheads.
Yeah.
Then here's the other problem. Prior to that, I'm obviously totally alternative, completely. Then people would, on Twitter and other avenues they liked me, people who I had, whatever social media relationships with or who were listeners or whatever. They like me. They've identified with this alt-right now without probably digging in too deeply, because in the beginning I got a lot of calls saying, no, alt-right is not nationalist. It's not white supremacist. It's not this, it's not that. And I'm not saying it is or it isn't, but what you're saying, the language is hijacked. And then I'm in a position where I have to distance myself from people I like, who maybe use that word. I'm alt-right, haha, I'm a deplorable, I'm Pepe the Frog or whatever his name is. You know what I'm saying? Like who will say it doesn't mean that, right? Who will say it's like the anarchist thing. Like I am an anarcho-capitalist and people think anarchists are communists. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm not. But if I have my anarchy symbol, I look like, communist or a Satan worshiper or whatever, that symbolism is. And there's just no way to not be put in a basket, the basket of deplorables. Right. I'm in a basket now, or I'm not in a basket, or I'm trying to get out of the basket. Does that mean I'm in a basket of nasties? Like what?
Yeah. I mean, they say the whole song about sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never harm me. That's total bullshit. Words are filled with emotion, and people react and go to war over words. And they can people who can control the language and condition the way you feel and react to certain trigger words. I mean, that's a powerful thing. And people don't realize that, especially when they get in groups, that when these trigger words are used, and say a Republican and a Democrat are having an argument. I used to see people at the theater do this all the time. And as soon as certain trigger words came in, it was a screaming match. And neither one of them was actually reacting to anything the other person said, and largely not to anything the other person believed. They were simply reacting to the stereotype of this representation of this word that had been conditioned in them.
Here's what's so upsetting to me about this whole thing is that I actually am not agenda driven. Like I don't, I'm on the 1,000-year plan. I don't really I'm curious to know, of the triangle, the UK, the US, and Israel, like which way it rotates, like which one's on top. I really, it all seems to me like ultimately British, maybe a coalition between the actual Rothschilds and the British.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like to me. I really don't know, but I'm curious about it. I'm interested in it. I won't even Google stuff about it because,
Yeah.
you end up in this basket. So like for me, if I was in that bar having that conversation, I'm not the Democrat or the Republican.
You just want to have the conversation.
Want to have the conversation. Like, what if it's true? Like the Pope. I'm Catholic. I think the Pope is an atheist. You know what I'm saying? But the only reason I'm allowed to say that is that I'm part of the identity group.
Right.
I'm allowed to say that. Maybe I'm just a self-hating Catholic and I'm not allowed to say anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's possible the Vatican is on top of that, because the Vatican could be an extension of the original bankers in Florence or Venice, or the Venetians, people think are still in control, that the original bankers in Italy hundreds of years ago controlled money from then on and controlled the world from then on. It could be the Vatican on top.
Yeah.
But I can't even explore, all the networks and stuff because you get pigeonholed like that. But I just want to have conversations. And it's impossible. Now, does it really matter?
And that's intentional. Yeah.
But, but it's intentional because they don't want you to know. But even if we did know, what difference would it make? You know what I mean? Like they almost get off on telling us, on like that Orlando thing, shooting whatever, Omar Mateen, the crazy videos of people like carrying, their friend out who is supposedly injured. And as soon as they thought they were off camera, everybody jumps up and starts laughing and running away. Like, why is that still on YouTube? Why is that still there? I mean, I think Michelle Obama might have actually said Whitey, and that's not on YouTube. And Rick Perry had this crazy video that was on YouTube years ago about him berating a young cop, and that's completely scrubbed from YouTube. I mean, they can scrub this stuff. Why do they put it out there for us to discover? I just
they have demonetized a couple of our video. I've gotten them back monetized, most of them. But
Why?
we don't, because I think there's certain words that trigger an algorithm. I've realized
they're not listening to it.
Yeah, no, they're not watching. But when you have to when
Is
you
it
do
the title?
Yeah, I think it's the title and probably the description also. So when you do an appeal, though, it takes a couple of days. I think somebody does actually listen to it when you do an appeal.
Like that guy who got off PewDiePie. Didn't he?
Yeah.
The Wall Street Journal called him a Nazi or an anti-Semite or something, and he got demonetized for that. And then he said, like 2 days later, I read the Wall Street Journal coverage. It didn't say anything about his defense. And then later he said it was completely taken out of context. And I don't know the real answer, but that guy, I think he just lost $15 million overnight because the Wall Street Journal called him an anti-Semite.
You're probably right. He did get removed from YouTube's preferred people or whatever, but the guy has 50 million subscribers, and
so he's going to be fine.
He's going to be all right. Yeah, the guy.
I want to see the full context though, because you could definitely take stuff out of context that would be tongue in cheek. I mean, the Blues Brothers, the Illinois Nazis and the Blues Brothers is not Steven Spielberg promoting Nazis.
Yeah,
remember that movie?
Yeah, I remember that movie.
Anyway.
Well, PewDiePie or whatever his name is, from what I know of it, I mean, what he did, his channel is it plays to kids basically, and it's like
my kids knew who he was, although they never watched it.
It's like going out and putting fireworks in people's mailboxes is the equivalent, and farting. That's the equivalent of. I mean, but he's playing video games.
Yeah, that's funny to me.
Yeah. Well, what he did was he saw that there's those websites where you can pay people $5 to do things for you, and he was paying people. He was signing up for it and trying to get people to do the most ridiculous things, and he didn't think they would do it, so he put "Go to this part of town" and put "Death to Jews" on the sign, and he didn't think people would do it. And
that's just stupid.
It is. It's stupid.
That's super stupid.
But it's a childish thing. It's not like somebody who really is going out and trying to promote this idea.
Right. And it's not like it's a Muslim.
No.
Right. Who would get, you know what I mean? That's the kind of thing you say, with the clowns and everything. It's people will really do it. You're telling them to do it. They're really going to do it.
Yeah.
And it's not, plays right into whatever psyop is going on. But no, I'm super worried about this John Bolton thing.
I know.
Just
I
because
know
I
it.
don't want a big war. I mean, it's crazy and it's so immoral. It's so immoral. And I looked back, I was reading about how they sold the Iraq war to us because I was reading about him, and it came up that the number one reason that Bush got consent for that war was, information this guy stovepiped to him, Bolton stovepiped to him, to use the word of the day. And it said that the argument was that Saddam Hussein had the capability to develop nuclear weapons that could reach our shores. So how long ago was that? 15 years ago? That is just war. And I remember arguing to my father. My father was against it. He's a real traditional conservative. He had his absolute principles. And he said, that guy is not a threat to us. He is not attacking us. We cannot use aggression towards him. And I said, but if you could stop Hitler before, one day before it was too late, wouldn't you? Whatever. I mean, that's how stupid I was. But it's preposterous to think that he, now in retrospect, there was absolutely that was really a stretch, let's say. Maybe not preposterous, but it was really a stretch to think that. I thought it. I was pretty young, and really totally not plugged in. But now we don't even say that Iran could attack us. We say Iran could attack Israel, or that we are protecting our American interests abroad. So our thinking about what justifies war has changed. So it's no longer, what used to be the non-aggression principle was universal. And that's the fundamental libertarian tenet is the non-aggression principle, which is you cannot initiate violence. So you can only use violence if somebody has initiated it against you or violated your rights. I mean, if somebody steals your stuff, you can tackle them, because stealing is a inherently violent act. But so this is what we really need to have, that standard brought back. But not only are we not using, not only was Saddam Hussein not a threat to us, now we don't even need that as an excuse. And that's what really worries me about the Iran thing. We have no business, this Bolton says we need to protect our interests around the world. It's like, no, if you are an American company and you want to go digging in somebody else's backyard, you have to deal with their rules. If you have any respect for sovereignty or want your sovereignty to be respected, you cannot expect the U.S. government to go in and protect an asset that you brought over there. But that's what this expression American exceptionalism really means. This is important, that people think it means that the American experiment is the first thing that, the only real government based on the sovereignty of the people. That's what they want you to hear. But what they really mean, and this was first laid out to me, but I kind of could tell anyway, but this Prouty book, JFK, where he talks about that we feel, or like these imperialists feel, that we are an exception to the laws of nations, which define sovereignty and defend sovereignty, so that we can violate the sovereignty of other countries. So Obama dropped 20,000 bombs on Syria and Iraq last year. And those places are much smaller than the United States. So if they took the equivalent of dropping, 100,000 bombs on the United States, we would consider that a violation of our sovereignty, no matter what we were up to. But we feel like we're allowed to do it, and they are not. Yeah. And that's what American exceptionalism really is. And that is really what John Bolton is all about. And that's an immoral position that the right has been manipulated into adopting. If you read Neoconservatism, The Autobiography of an Idea, or my summary of it on my website, monicaperezshow.com, it talks about how easy it is to shape the American mind when it comes to foreign policy and economics, and how it is the elite's job. This is the guy who's, the elite's
Lippmann talks
job
about that in his book. Yeah, Walter Lippmann, 1922, talks about that exact thing.
And he reshaped, Irving Kristol and his gang reshaped the Republican Party at that time on purpose. I mean, that's what this book says. We need to reshape the Republican Party. So it's a party of power.
Yeah.
Stop with the principles already. We will never wield power and get what we want if we stick to principles.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm afraid of.
Sounds like Saul Alinsky again.
Well, he was a Trotskyite.
Yeah.
Irving
yeah.
Kristol was a Trotskyite. And Saul Alinsky probably was too.
I want to mention two quick things.
Yes.
Take about a minute.
Okay.
I made a video. I just want to point it out because it is coming up here in the next few weeks. Is the people who organize the Women's March on Washington? They organize their next big event, and it is on March 8th. And just like the event on January 21st, the event on March 8th is held on a communist holiday. So both their first two events held on traditional communist holidays. I pointed this out a long time ago when I first started reading this book. So I'm interested to see if this pattern continues.
Well, and look for May 1st, right?
May 1st.
Day is
yeah,
the
exactly. That's in the video. That's the one I said to look out for the next one.
Yeah.
And we talked about Westworld, and I'll show you the clip of this too, and I'll send it. But I went to answer some of the questions they have. They do an assessment on the website. They try to do this immersive experience, and they ask you questions that basically gives you insights into whether you're into transhumanism, whether you would kill people for population control. And then I was trying to screenshot one of the photos.
Oh, no.
And the website does all this weird stuff to try to get people to get immersed in it and like play the game,
gosh.
you know?
And
I pushed the button and some some weird creepy thing came up, and it was like one of the people. The idea was that the person was was an android, and the person talking to you, I thought it was the man in black at first, but I don't think it was. He was going, "I made you," rah, rah. And it was really creepy. I was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
And you also have to agree to these weird terms and conditions when you answer these questions, which they make it seem like it's fun. But when you read a couple of them, it's like, I'm wondering what actually you're agreeing to when you click these, because a couple of these might actually be able to be held up. Not all. Some of them are crazy.
Wait, can you explain that? I'm not crystal clear on what you're saying.
They get you to sign in order to do this, to play the game, to go to the website and kind of, I want to do the assessment to see what my experience in Westworld would be. You have to agree to these terms and conditions. And the terms and conditions say when you're in the park, when you're doing the service, but I'm like, what is the service? What is the park? Is this website the service, the park?
Yes.
And then a lot of the terms and conditions are just really crazy. There's stuff like, we get all of your DNA and all of the blood and all of basically any bodily fluids they get to keep.
So is this real, or are you saying that this is mock?
What I'm saying is it seems like it's mock because of
I understand.
over the top stuff. But within a bunch of like over the top clauses, there's one that says, while we've never done it, we reserve the right to provide any of your information to law enforcement if necessary. I'm like, that one right there, I might have just actually agreed to that.
Oh no! Oh my gosh! Oh, that's what you clicked on. That's crazy.
Well, I mean, I figured that going in, but like, I wanted to read through it.
But you know what? I mean, I feel like if they want to bring you down, they're going to bring you down.
It's just another one of those weird ways, like Facebook, to get people to voluntarily give information about themselves, as opposed to pulling it.
Plays into your virtual reality thing where they're going to have regulation and laws.
That's what I told my sister. I was like, what is my bodily fluids? Can they take DNA off my keyboard now? Is this a virtual? It's so it's interesting. I'll put some of the images up and I'll send you the video. It's really creepy. Actually, I happened to be recording the screen at the time because I was answering the questions and recording it.
Oh,
so
you can do that?
I have the video of that like computer thing going.
Wow. Oh, you have to put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's crazy.
All right, awesome. Well, I hope I didn't keep you too late.
No, you're good. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Exchange. And all right, so this is episode 28. Episode 27 is kind of a companion, what we did on the air, also about this Mike Flynn deep state stuff. So they go together, and we referred to it earlier. That's how you find it. Propaganda Report, episode 28. And then the other one, this is 28. The other one's 27. All right. Awesome. Have a great night.
You too. See you later.